Welcome to my talk. All right, so let's start with who I am, or who am I? I'm a prior B-side speaker where I spoke about being a con man and working in Vegas surveillance. I spoke at DEF CON on VoIP security and as well as DC Sky Talks on automate your stalking, which we'll kind of cover a little bit about today. And most recently, the Recon Village in the last few years, where we talked about stalker in a haystack, URL shortened by any other name, which was last year, and of course this year and this talk. Just it's virtual now. You could find me at Chenbox. That is my handle on most social media, so feel free to follow. All right, so let's get into this and let's start from where we are at this point in time, and that I think that'll help us understand where my mindset is when it comes to this talk. So of course, I started with automate your stalking, where I was digging into my Twitter research. This is bad, and we learned that during the DC Sky Talks a couple of years ago. So the following year, I did Stalker in a Haystack, where we figure out how to not be stalked, or at least we can detect cyber stalking, and that was good. And now I've gotten recently into political sports betting, or market speculation, which is part of the story. And profiling. I mean profiling like social media profiling on different accounts. And of course, I do have a degree in psychology, so all this kind of wraps up into where we are at this point. So these 5 pieces are what kind of has gotten around this research here. So about this talk. I'm going to start with the original goal and how I came up with what I was researching at that moment, why that failed, and why we move on to what it is currently now as I'm presenting this, and what I would like my current research to be in the future. So before we get into all of that, though, let's talk about caveats and disclaimers and warnings. Oh my. I'm bad at that. Anyway. First caveat or first disclaimer is, for those who have followed my work before, you know that I've said IANAL or IANIS, which is I am not a lawyer and I am not a stalker. I'm going to add something new to that because I'm very new to the whole data science thing. I've only recently gotten into using pandas and scikit-learn and NumPy and all these different data analytics tools. So I've added INADS. I am not a data scientist. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a stalker, and I am definitely not a data scientist, but I'll try my best. So this project is a work in progress, and I'm hoping that after I explain kind of what we're doing here today, that maybe I can get some help from the community to further this project, or at least now that I've defined the basics, I can continue and make this something very strong. This is a neutral tool. I'm not building what I'm building today for stalking purposes. This is just a tool. You use it how you want. But of course, as always, I'm not going to be held responsible for what you do with my research. And I did not stand on the shoulders of giants for this research. What I mean by that is, I know that there's a lot of research already in the space when it comes to frequency analysis, word frequency analysis, sentiment analysis, NLP, not neuro-linguistic programming, but natural language processing. I know that there's all that research out there, and I barely used any of it. I would like to integrate that later, but I just want to let you know that for this particular talk, that was really not used. So it is definitely a work in progress. All right, so again, for those of you who know me, I'm not a sports guy. I've only recently gotten into hockey, and I've always been a UFC fan. But other than that, I'm not a sports person, so I've never been into the sports book. But there's one thing I know about being in Vegas for my entire life is that there's a sports book for every market. It doesn't matter what the market or what the speculation is. There's a sports book for it, or a betting market for it, and that's kind of where we start our story. So if anybody's ever heard of predictit.org, it's a market for political sports betting. So you can bet on, who you think the next president's going to be, not just in America, but globally. Pick a country, pick a state, pick a, you know, impeachment hearings, who will run the White House, who's going to be the VP pick. All of these different markets are on predictit.org. And so you can make a fair amount of money if you know what you're doing, or you can just have a casual bet and just be right with a few dollars and cents. And so, and specifically, we're going to be talking about President Donald Trump's tweets, as that is kind of a famous thing here, and how it pertains to the political sports betting market. Okay. And well, let's get into that now, because right now we're talking about piecount.com, which is a tweet counter that's out there on the internet. And it keeps track on a weekly basis of the president's tweets, as well as the VP, the White House, and the POTUS accounts. And this is all geared towards the tweet market that Predictit offers, or used to offer, and we'll get into that in a second. But we're talking about Twitter, Twitter markets. Again, this is on a weekly basis. The question, or the market, is how many tweets will the president tweet out for this particular week, starting from Wednesday of this week and going on to Wednesday of the next week. It could be anywhere from 50, which is highly unlikely, all the way up to 300, 400, and that's what I was analyzing beforehand. Now, I wanted to know if the profits could be based off of analytics, and could I anticipate what he would be tweeting based off of current events, news, drama, anything that's out there in the global space. And the goal with this original research was to get the president to pay for my energy bill. So if I made enough money on this predictit.org market, could I pay my energy bill at the house with Donald Trump's tweets? That's where I was going with this whole thing. So again, prior research is the frequency of the tweets, how often he would tweet in that week, and I was capturing, as you'll see here in the CSV file on the right side of the screen here, I was capturing on a weekly basis how many tweets. How many tweets did he do in this week? Well, we see 68 in the week of April of 2019. We see 137, 140, 141. So these are all a rolling tally, or a running tally of his tweets. And of course, you graph it using Jupyter, a Jupyter notebook. You graph it and see the frequency here, and then you ask yourself, was this peak here due to impeachment drama? Was this due to some sort of scandal or emergency in the Middle East? What caused these peaks of tweets? Was it just somebody getting on the president's nerves? These were all the questions that I was asking at the time. But there's a problem. Predictit.org actually stopped their tweet markets. So while Predictit is still around, they no longer offer you the ability to bet on tweets. And so all of this research has kind of just stopped. So they changed their offerings. They started to offer other markets that just weren't working fast enough. These other markets aren't resolving on a weekly basis. And so my profits slowed to a halt. And so because of that, this whole project that I was working on as far as tweet frequency, it kind of took a back burner, and I kind of forgot about it for a couple of months. But it got resurrected, and so the project lives, and I'll tell you why. So I tweet on a regular basis, and I tweet very vague things, and that's on purpose, I would say. It could be a Zen of the Day quote. It could be something obscure, or just something that's on my mind, right? Because that's exactly what Twitter is used for. You post something just because it's something that you're thinking about, and then you just let it out there. It's not always political. It's not always socially driven. It's just a thought that's on your mind. Well, I had one of my followers kind of get a little bit offended, or had a little bit of ruffled feathers here with one of my tweets. And so he kind of got mad at me, and it was I wasn't being political, but the vagueness of my tweet allowed this particular person to project their political ideals on my tweet. So I thought about that for a while, and I could have gotten mad and gotten back and forth with him, but I didn't. And instead, like, I don't get mad, but I will turn you into research, and that's what's bringing us here today. So again, the target projected their beliefs on me and the meaning of my tweet, even though there was no correlation there. There was nothing to draw conclusions from. Okay, and so blindsided by rage, meaning that I had no idea that this was going to be happening. But I asked myself, could I have seen this coming? Could I have predicted that maybe what I tweeted would result in a certain outrage from not just a certain demographic, but for maybe specific people? And this is still the work in progress. So, who are we targeting with what we're working with today? Well, as stated in the last slide, we're working with political opponents, or we're talking about political opponents, and not because we're trying to be political, but just because this is a use case for what we're doing here. This is a scenario. Corporate marks. We could use what we're going to do today for spear phishing, or maybe password lists, or some sort of targeted execution of an attack. Cyberbullies, there are plenty out there, and wouldn't you want a leg up if you knew the type of vocabulary that they were using, the way in which they tweet, the sentiment behind their tweets, and maybe you could work for a better outcome against your cyberbullies, because yes, they are definitely out there. Now, sadly, I have to address this. This also has some stalker interests, but remember what I said before and in my previous research. Stalker interest. This is bad. While it can be used for stalking, I do not condone it. I think we've crossed that already. Yes. Okay. So what are we talking about? Well, everybody knows Twitter is a gold mine for OSINT and Recon. Okay. And it's not a secret. It's very well known, and it's that way by design. Not everybody has a private account, and it kind of ruins the fun if you are on a private account. So Twitter we know as a publicly shared sentiment. If you're going to put it on Twitter, you have to expect that it can be analyzed, it can be scraped, it can be mined, it could be used for research, such as today's research. So what we're doing, though, is we're making an at-a-glance picture of what this profile, target profile, is about, what it's all about. So the term at a glance, what I'm talking about here is instead of having to scroll through an entire timeline to understand what this particular profile is all about, what if we could just take a look at a dashboard or just one screen and understand the sentiment of that Twitter profile? That's something that I think would be very valuable. Why? Why are we doing this? Well, because because we can. We're hackers, and this is what we do. We look at something, we look at a problem, we look at maybe a scenario that has recently happened to us, and we say, okay, I know how to fix that, or I know what I can do about that. So yes, because I can, because we can. Remember, we're hackers. All right, and we also want to do this because this gives us an insight into tendency of the profile. Okay, again, and the goal is here to find maybe quicker red flags, maybe catch that outrage before it bubbles up and blindsides us. Okay, and of course, as with anything, we could use this for later weaponization. We could turn this into something that could be an offensive tool if needed, of course. And we're talking about password lists, further social profiling, maybe psychological profiling, and troll bots. Maybe they could have a conversation with themselves. Now, how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to look at a couple of things. We're going to track a small sample size of the recent tweets in the timeline and an ongoing sample, of course, as we add that programmatically. And we're going to be doing our analysis on word frequency, word choice, retweet frequency, and hashtag usage. That's actually, of course, as we know, it's pretty important. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at the code, but before we do, a couple of notes here. And you can play the game at home, actually. So now, by the time that you're watching this, this should be available and public for you and your consumption, so you can follow along with what I'm doing here in the next few slides. So I'll go ahead and give you a minute to take that link down, and we'll go from there. Actually, there's a couple more points here. So it's just basically my GitHub handle and the name of the project, Twitter word frequency. Now I scraped this information with Python, and it's all Python. All of this is Python. But I scraped with an actual Python file, and then I used a Jupyter notebook for more analysis. And there's a reason for that as well. And we'll see that in the next couple of slides. In the background here, you'll see a code snippet of the actual script, which pulls the timeline. Now, there's a couple of things here. It either checks to see if the timeline has already been saved on your machine, and if it hasn't been saved on your machine, it then goes out using the Twitter API to grab the latest timeline of your subject or of your target. Okay. Now in the foreground here, you're going to be seeing a snippet from the Jupyter Notebook, and I used the Jupyter Notebook because maybe I wanted to run a little snippet of the code without running the entire script. So a lot of the code is going to be the same, but with Jupyter Notebook, and I'm sure everybody who's in data science already, remember, I'm not. You already understand that you can take these pieces of or snippets of code and just run those individually and change things as new data becomes available to you. All right, so let's talk now about the analysis. Okay, so this first analysis is actually myself. This is my own analysis on my handle at Chenbox. So on the left side, you'll see a couple of the words here that I've used on a regular basis. Of course, with most current recent events, you see mask is used there 6 times. Twitter, okay, because I've had opinions about Twitter on Twitter. Okay, so that's there. Now you'll notice that these red blotched out pieces are actually these are Twitter accounts. Okay, and how often I've referenced these Twitter accounts. So this can be a way that we can, again, we're talking about at a glance, we can see who we're looking at, who we're associating with quite quickly and right up front. Okay. On the in the middle on the top side, you'll see I have a red dot right next to RT. RT meaning, of course, retweet, and you'll see that my retweet frequency is about 54 times in a 200 tweet sample. That's what that means. Remember, this is out of 200 tweets. 200 tweets, 54 of those were retweets of other people, and of course, all these Twitter accounts that are blotched out. I think it would be safe to assume that if I'm not mentioning somebody, I'm definitely retweeting them. At the bottom, you'll see 2638, which is the word count associated with the last 200 tweet sample of my own personal account. I'm using mine as a baseline. And on the right side, you'll see my use of hashtags and, of course, its frequency. And at the bottom is the association with the histograms. It's a histogram associated with the hashtags there at the top. And there's my handle, so you know that this particular slide was for my own profile analysis. Okay, so remember that person that I said got kind of angry with my vague tweet? Well, this is the analysis slide of his account. So you'll see that there's a couple of differences, obviously, because we're not exactly the same. On the left side, we'll see a couple. He's mentioning a couple of people who are blotched out, not as frequently as maybe I do, but these profiles are in the scan that I've seen. You'll see his retweet frequency is 178. So out of a 200 tweet sample, we're talking about 178 of those being retweets. And I also hit the a red dot on the word I because I was just kind of curious as to see how often somebody is using I in a sentence. I'm sure that there's a psychological profile based off of the use of that word, right? And at the bottom, we see the word frequency, 3788. I know that there's math that we can do on this or on this word count as far as calculating, the types of words that we're using, how big they are, how small they are, etc. And another interesting thing about this particular analysis is the histogram on the right side indicates that this particular individual only only uses a hashtag once, like one and done. So I found that to be interesting. Again, this is for the at my target. This is not the actual Twitter account, obviously, but I thought I had to identify it somehow. Now, lastly, I'd like to, I used myself as a baseline. This is the target's dashboard analysis, and this next one is actually President Donald Trump, and we'll see, of course, a couple of key features here. On the left, we don't see the word I. Actually, we do, but it's no more than 20 times. Now, for those of us who might think that President Trump is a little bit of a narcissist, we might be kind of surprised to see that he's only tweeted the word I about 20 times in a 200 tweet sample. At the bottom there, we see 3,400 words. So these are all kind of interesting, the same stats. He's retweeted only 96 times in a past 200 tweet sample. Of course, this piece is not so surprising because we know that he uses a lot of his own words in his tweets. But back to the left side really quick, the only blotched out account there, I don't know if anybody wants to take a quick guess at what that is. I know I can't wait necessarily for your answer, as this is the closest that we can get to audience participation at the moment. But yes, if you guessed that was his own account, you are correct. So what I'm saying here is he's mentioned himself in his own tweets about 46 times. So that might be an indicator of narcissism, maybe tweeting in the third person. We'll have to analyze further for that. And on the right side, we'll see, again, our histogram and hashtag matching. So President Trump has maybe tweeted a couple of things with hashtags, but of course, the recurring one is MAGA. Is anybody surprised? I don't think anybody is. I'm not. And actually, that would have been 3 if he didn't add emojis to that third MAGA there at the bottom. So again, my point is, all of this was programmatically, all of this was programmatically scraped and put together so that we can, at a glance, take a look at what a target is talking about. And this is done, I understand that this could be easily done through APIs and other research. This is my own basic whiteboard. This is my own starting from scratch analysis of these targets. Myself, President Trump because of the sports betting, and of course somebody who got really mad at me for something that was really vague. Okay, so now that that's an overview of the data, really quickly, let's take a look at the insights here. So some of the insights. It seems like, of course, retweets indicate shared sentiment. Well, duh, but the question is, from who? Who are we sharing a sentiment with? This might give us insights, of course, into who a person is associating with, or how frequently, or how closely related these ideals may be that they share, depending on the retweet, of course. And of course, we see narcissism in hashtags. So you may see a lot of your own. Actually, okay. So there's a couple of things here. I did forget to include a screenshot that I have of my target tweeting himself, like his own handle, in the hashtags. So his hashtag, his own handle. And I found that to be very narcissistic, kind of interesting, but that's something that I wanted to piece in there, so I do apologize for not having that screen cap in there, but I found that to be interesting, and that's why I put that in here in the insights. And repeating hashtags, to me, of course, again, this is kind of obvious when it comes to somebody who's a regular Twitter user. It depicts brand or focus, And of course, we see that with the repeating hashtags. Um, Now, I've noticed that the word frequency count significantly drops off after stop words. I have a rudimentary introduction to natural language processing, so I understand a little bit about tokenization and what stop words are. Stop words being like in the very small words that kind of glue the English language together, right? And so again, after those words are scraped off the top, the frequency of those words of other words really drop. And of course, for those who are linguists, may already know that. Obviously, with what I've presented today, we know that descriptive statistics are as far as we can get without any sort of further analysis with better tools. Better tools being, of course, neurolinguistic not other, natural language processing, maybe some other types of data science tools and techniques. And so that is where this work in progress is going to be heading next. Okay, and so speaking of which, where do we go from here? Okay, well, of course, I want to clean up the data collection methods. Right now, it is pretty rough, and I'd like to turn that into something that is easy to read and followed very easily. Better data visualization. I quickly grabbed screenshots together, but of course I'd like to incorporate word clouds and other charting, maybe better charting, right? Dashboard of data, I'd like to clean that up so that, again, the whole goal is an at a glance for a Twitter analysis, okay? Now, what can we do with this? Well, we could talk about profile scoring. So, for instance, leanings, whether it's a sentimental leaning, a political leaning, a corporate leaning. I'd like to see if we can understand that at a quick look. The potential for extremism. If somebody is getting mad at you for a tweet that was vague enough for them to project um, meaning onto it, then what is the potential for somebody to go kind of a little bit more off the rails? That's something else that I'd like to look at. And of course, ongoing, me being a psychology buff, ongoing psychological profiles and red flag notifications. If there's a red flag with anything that we see here in their timeline, can we detect that? And of course, I'm almost certain that there's already research out there. I'd like to continue looking at that myself and building from there. So features to incorporate, I've said it a lot already. Natural language processing, I think that'll be a very good thing to add in here. Sentiment analysis, also part of that space. A mirror bot. Really quickly, what I want to talk about there is if we know how our target speaks, can we make a bot that kind of talks to themselves? I think that would be kind of funny to watch. Hopefully it doesn't get anybody banned, but I think it'll be funny to see. Just as a funny project. It's just jokes, folks. It's just jokes. Um, I want to build off of the prior research that I myself and the community has done, including my stalker research and anti-stalking research and anything else that the community has done. I'd like to incorporate in what I'm doing now. Um, and even though today I've only shown 3 profiles, I'd like to do a quick mass scripted analysis of maybe everybody that is following me or everybody that I'm following, and just see what kind of results are in their timeline. Remember, these are public timelines, and of course, I don't want to hit any rate limits, so we'll do it slowly. Some future questions that are on my mind when it comes to this is. Can I get a target to talk to themselves and agree or disagree? I think that would be funny. That's what I was mentioning with the mirror bot. Can a person have a conversation with themselves and disagree on their own, maybe extremist points or non-extremist points? Next question is, can outrage be predicted? That's another thing that's something that I've brought up prior or earlier in this talk as well. Could that be predicted based off of what is in the current events in the news and what's going on globally at the moment? Next one. Of course, any questions that the audience may have for me, I would definitely want to put that into this project. So to summarize, Who said nothing good came out of sports betting? I think there's some benefit here, and I'm glad that I went down this rabbit hole. Uh, Now, sharing vague sentiments can still make frenemies. Apparently, I was not expecting that, even with today's climate. But hey, it is what it is. Now, remember, don't get mad. Don't get mad. Don't feed the outrage. Just don't don't send the rage back. Just get productive. Take what you have and turn it into research. That's been my guiding light for the past 5 years, maybe longer. Start somewhere. Like I said, this project is definitely a work in progress, but I'm going to start somewhere, and of course, we build. Okay, so fork me. There's the link again, the GitHub link if you didn't get it before. Twitter word frequency, and oh, sorry, I'll give you a couple seconds on that one. Couple more. And resources. So the top link is actually another. It's college speech on uh, natural language processing and how that goes. And then of course, these next two these next two links are very good. I'll let you check that one out because those are actually kind of in line with what I'm trying to do, but on a massive scale for myself. Like I'm trying to do this on a massive scale. What these last two links are doing specifically for Donald Trump's tweet account. Thank you very much. And that concludes my talk.